Us. Martial arts, combat sports versus real street fights. So I had a conversation with a couple of my subscribers, and they were actually telling me that what works in the cage, in MMA, boxing ring, against the average Joe on the street, it will work against them. You can knock out somebody on the street easily, which I agree with. But you have to understand when it comes to combat sports, any kind of sports, there are rules in there. There is referee, judges, there's limitations on what you can do in that cage or in that ring. So that's why it's a sport. On the street, especially real street fight, there is no rules. So even against the average Joe on the street, sure, you can go out there and try to knock out the average Joe, but sometimes that average Joe is the one that pulls out a gun or a knife, shoot you and stab you, kill you. So those things you can't predict. And of course you can land a roundhouse kick like what Holly Holm did here on Ronda Rousey and knock her out. You can knock out somebody like that on the street. Simple, easily. The average Joe. The thing is that the average Joe might not square off with you like that. The average Joe might not stand in front of you with just their empty hands. They might have a extension of their hands, like a knife or a gun, and you're trying to throw that kick and they shoot you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just the way it goes, man, on the street. Actually a real street fight, not an organized street fight. There's a difference between an organized street fight when both parties agree, okay, we are just going to fight, nobody jumps in, and there's no weapons. That's different, but it's on the street. But an actual real confrontation, I mean, that's like life and death. And if you can avoid that, avoid it. Avoid that. If you can run, because you don't know what the person have on them. And to get a knife and to get a gun in these day and age is easy. Everybody has a gun. All my friends have guns. A lot of people I know carry the gun on them. And if it's not on them, it's in their glove compartment. I mean, and they have a license for it too, to carry it. And to carry it on them also. So, I mean, if you go out there thinking you're going to punch and kick somebody in the face, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, I'm telling you. You're going to be in for a big surprise. And it doesn't matter what neighborhood. It doesn't matter if it's a bad neighborhood or a good neighborhood. Everybody have guns, man. Everybody have a knife. Everybody have some sort of weapon on them in these day and age, man. So, as I said, you can take the chance. Yeah, sure. Do what you see on the MMA and the sports and go out there and try to do it on somebody. You can take the risk and try. Hopefully that person doesn't have any weapon in them. And you probably can knock them out. I'm not saying the techniques don't work. But just keep in mind that there are weapons and friends of friends who are just spectating but choose to jump in while you're getting hit and possibly could stomp on your head, end your life. Like this guy here that's laying down on his face. I mean, if they wanted to, they could have ended him there. He could just jump in the air and step on his head and he'd be dead. That's it. Street fight. There's no rules. There's nobody around to really stop anything. Even this guy here in the white and brown shirt was telling them to like, hey, ease off of him, but they wasn't listening. They keep on hitting him because there's no rules. It's like, man, this is a street, a street fight. You fight to the death, stomp to the back of the head. That's basically it. You get kicked in the face, stumped in the head by 2, 3, 4 people. That's it. You get brain damage, you death, die. That's it. Basically, simple like that. If you can avoid it, avoid it. Street fight, self-defense only. Somebody are really attacking and you have no choice. Then that's a difference. This right here, the Kimbo fight here, this is an organized street fight. Big difference. These guys put money up and they find a spot like a boxing ring, or a cage fight, and they find a little open area and they agree that this is just what it is. We're going to just fight for money and that's it. So nobody jumps in, there's no weapons, and you fight and that's it. But it's organized street fight. You have these gun and knife weapons brass knuckles, everything, nunchucks, but most likely you're gonna buck up on a gun or a knife. Small switchblade, you know, gun, any kind, 22, whatever, you know, easy to carry, you know. People said, had an argument with, Bruce Lee would never last in MMA. In my opinion, Bruce Lee would never fight in MMA. He would have never competed in MMA because he wasn't training for sport. He was training for a real life situation. Like this picture here, he was training for defense against knife attacks. He was training against defense for guns, street fighting purposes. He was training for specific techniques. The kick to the groin, jab in the eye, kick to the knee. So he wasn't training to put on gloves and go into a cage or a boxing ring and then fight. Because that's not where it is at. He knows that that's entertainment. It's a difference than actual real fighting. You can't prepare, you cannot prepare for a real street fight. You can't. Most of that is just off of instincts. You have to be spontaneous, just reaction. You can't really, you can practice techniques, you can drill knife techniques, you can drill self-defense techniques, but that doesn't mean when you're in the street fight, you're going to do exactly move for whatever attack is coming at you. Because most of the time, it doesn't happen like that. So you can't really prepare for it. It's just reaction, just drilling it consistently. Here, Bruce Lee is using, gloves here, but he usually trains without gloves, but he's practicing his technique because when you're using gloves, you can go a little harder with your opponent without injuring them. With your bare knuckles, you can seriously hurt your opponent. So he tried to train full on. And when he goes full on, he wears the glove and the headgear. Here, he's training for multiple opponents. Here, he kicked this guy, then he would stomp down on this guy's face. So his training was for real life situation, for self-defense purposes, not for combat sports. So he would have never been in any MMA fight. He would have never done that. He's developing his knuckles. He's trying to condition his knuckles for a real life situation. So when you punch somebody on the street, or you have to use your punch on the street, you don't break your hand. So he was developing his knuckles. So there's a difference. In combat sports, you wear gloves, you wear a mouthpiece. So you're training for that specific fight that you're gonna have, and you know who you're gonna fight, and you prepare for it. It's a game, it's a sport. You have rounds, you have weigh-ins, get the weight right, so both of you guys are at the same weight. On the streets, there are no weigh-ins. Just whatever goes, whatever weight you're, that's the weight you're gonna be, and you fight at that weight. Bruce Lee here is implementing a finger jab, very deadly technique. Can blind your opponent. Opponent can lose his eye. You might see this in the UFC by accident. A lot of the guys accidentally poke each other in the eye. Michael Bisping almost lost his eye by a finger jab, by a finger poke. So as you can see, it's a deadly technique, life and death situation. Bruce Lee's been training that. Bruce Lee has also been training the ground. Throws, grappling techniques, submission techniques, locks. He's been training that. Because he knew that you needed more than just stand up in a real life situation. But also that he knows that you don't want to be on the ground in a real life situation. You want to be on your feet, standing up. So he was training locks, arm bars, arm trapping, which he incorporate in his Jeet Kune Do. We have the intercepting fist, So as I mentioned, he was going towards that. So he was implementing the ground, which he showed a little bit in Into the Dragon, and then in the Game of Death is where he was gonna really show a lot of it, which he did, but it wasn't completed, and he never did it the way how he wanted it to be done. It was done by someone else because he died. Here he's doing an armbar. I mean, as I said, he was just starting out, developing the techniques. And as I mentioned, Vale Tudo, has been around since the 1900s. So there has been, ground fighting for a long time. Even way back in the Egyptian days, there's been ground fighting like way back. So Bruce Lee has been doing his research. Here's Enter the Dragon with Summer Hung. He's implementing like a armbar here. It's not perfect technique, but he was training and learning and just experimenting with it. So you're gonna have to experiment with something in order to be good at it. You're gonna have to try it. Here's a scene from Game of Death where he's demonstrating which looks like an arm triangle choke. So, I mean, Bruce Lee was way ahead of his time, but as I mentioned before, that there have been ground fighting way back since the Vale Tudo days, since the Egyptian way back. Here he's doing judo, he's doing a hip toss, So, as I mentioned, he has been doing his research and was incorporating throws and submissions in his training. And his book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, has chapters dedicated to just wrestling, submission, judo techniques, grappling, chokes, arm bars, locks, just name it. There was just a chapter dedicated to just that. So I mean, he was going towards that. And in my opinion, he was learning, creating these techniques, which he learned from other people, got the knowledge from other people, and made it his own. But he was learning it and perfecting it for real life situation and not for sport or MMA, because he would have never competed in MMA, But again, you can see some of the techniques in MMA, like with a Conor McGregor, Holly Holm, John Jones. You see some of the techniques, which again, like I mentioned, everybody samples everything. So Bruce Lee sampled his knowledge, his techniques from somebody else, and then he mixed it in with whatever he knows. That's what the Jeet Kune Do is. So we have the intercepting fists. Take whatever is useful and discard whatever is not, and you make it your own. You know what I'm saying? You take what you have and make it work for you. And that's basically it. So everybody is sampling everything. If you really think about it, everything is just revolving around. So as I mentioned, there's a difference between the combat sports and real life street fight. You just have to know the difference and accept the combat sports for what it is, as entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with that. I watch some of the fighters or some of the martial artists that are competing, and whenever it's interesting, that's what I watch. And I know the difference between real life fight and just the game. And I accept it as a game. I recognize it as just being a game, it's a sport. That's it. Both fighters, they make the weight, they prepare for that person. They can see a reel, of that person's techniques, what they do, and they prepare a game plan to beat their opponent, and another opponent does the same thing. It's a game. But a street fight is real life situation, is life and death. And you can't prepare for that. You can drill techniques, but you really cannot prepare like how you would prepare for a combat sport. And in combat sport, there's cages, there's rings, there's padding on the floor, streets, there's concrete, there's gravel, there's everything. You don't know where you're going to fight on the street. A lot of Bruce Lee movies, they give examples of techniques that you could use in a street fight and you can use in combat sports, But he would like to showcase that because that's a good way to get his energy, to get his workout, so people could see it. But I believe majority of the fight scenes you see in a real life situation, Bruce Lee would have never fought the way how you see him perform in those movies. I believe, yeah, there's some stuff in there that's useful, but he would say it's just for entertainment purposes. So a lot of the stuff is just for showcase. But when it comes to the real deal, he would use the most effective technique to end the fight the quickest. Jab finger to the eye, kick to the groin, a headbutt, You know, just like what he demonstrated in his books and some of his movies. You know, so the fastest effective technique is what he's going to use to end the fight. I don't think he'll be jumping around and kicking.